Today I want to show you how I use AI to generate Terraform code and how you can do it too. The example I'm using is a bucket with objects in AWS S3, but what I'm about to tell you applies to anything that you're using with Terraform, not only AWS, it can be another cloud, it can be different resources. So we start with my prompt here, which is I want to take you through this. First of all, I'm going to say do not refer to my name because AI always tells me back my name and I get annoyed with that. I need you to create a Terraform module for me. The resources to be created are AWS S3 bucket, AWS S3 object. Let me tell you how I came up with this idea. So we're on the Terraform documentation page here. Most people know what a bucket is. It's basically object storage for cloud. And the idea that I had was to group related resources together. So we have the bucket, but you see there are related resources that Terraform document will always show underneath. See, S3 simple storage, resources, this is the main resource, but these are all the related ones. And what I was thinking was, let's have this one here, AWS S3 object. This is basically, usually people think of this as individual files, but actually the way object storage works, it can also be folders in inverted commas and then files as well. So let's have a bucket with multiple objects inside it. Let's go back to the prompt. So here I've said the resources are AWS S3 bucket, AWS S3 object. For the module's input variables, there should be a one-to-one mapping input variable to the AWS S3 bucket resource arguments. So here we are on the bucket page, and pretty typical, you see here there's always an argument reference which is going to be related to the input variables, so region, bucket, bucket prefix, etc. And what I've said is I want these arguments in my module. I want bucket and I want tags. Okay, not interested in anything else. And then there should be one input variable of type map object. Now this is something I know how to do with experience, and I can now tell the AI to do it for me, and you'll learn various tips and tricks in your career as you go along. If you've never done this before, you're going to find out exactly how it works. You'll have this for your toolkit in future. Just bear with me. Each object represents a different AWS S3 bucket object resource. That should be this is the legacy one. I should have corrected that there, but anyway, each object should contain assignment for these resource arguments. So here we had bucket and tags, but for the object I want there to be just a key. That's all I'm interested in. And I said there is also a resource argument bucket which should link to this parent resource that we already mentioned. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Back on the documentation page, resource AWS S3 bucket, this one here, but let's go to the object resource that we're going to have multiple of. We're going to create one bucket and multiple objects inside. It can be one, it can be three, it can be 88, it really doesn't matter. And remember, I said I'm only interested in the key, but I said there is also an argument called bucket which needs to refer to the bucket name. It basically says this is the object and it belongs, it should lie inside this bucket. Well, obviously if I'm creating one bucket and multiple objects, I want it to always refer to what is basically like the linked bucket, the parent bucket. And that's what I said here. The bucket should link the resource argument bucket is a link to the parent resource that we already mentioned above, AWS S3 bucket. And for output variables, which are always useful in the module, if you're not aware of that, then give me the attribute ID of the AWS S3 bucket resource. Very common, always output at least the ID. Use only the arguments that I mentioned above. So bucket, tags, key, and also link to bucket. Use only those and no others. And yes, I'm aware that my files will be empty. I'm fine with that. So if you create an object that doesn't have a source in it, we don't have source, I'm only interested in the key argument, but if you don't have a source or another type of argument, then it will just be an empty file. I'm okay with that, I'm totally cool with that. Give me the full inline code for all of the module files. Sometimes AI will just give you a download link. I don't want that, I want to see it in front of me and hit the copy button. Give me the full inline code for all of the module files. And finally, give me a fictional example of using the module. You can make the key in each object a reference to which company department owns each object. This will be more clear when I show you the code. And then each object refers to text file budget reports. This is my fictional example. I wanted to just come up with something. So let's take a look. Now we will be looking at it in my code editor. It's a bit easier to see, but I just want to say and show you and prove to you that I did actually paste this prompt in here, and it did give me back all of this. Perfect. But let's go look at this in a code editor. So here we are in VS Code, and we've got here modules, S3 bucket with objects, and here are my modules. Now I just want to show you, before we go look at the module, I do have a provider.tf set up. This is the only file that the AI didn't give me. It's just a regular thing saying I'm using a Terraform version and I'm using AWS and this is my default region. No big deal. Let's go look at the module. So it gave me 3 files, main.tf, outputs.tf, and variables.tf. Let's check out main.tf. And we can see in here that there are 2 resources as I asked for. One is a bucket, one is an object. Now it's called it this, and this is an arbitrary name. It could be self, it could be like self is used in Python. It could be main, like some people like to use in different programming languages. It is quite common to use the word this. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a completely neutral name, but we are going to need it later to refer to that bucket, as you can see down here. So there's the resource for the bucket. The bucket is going to take a variable from var.bucket. Tags will be from var.tags. Then we're going to create between 1 and infinity number of objects inside that bucket. That's why we've got this for each in here, which will become clear shortly. And in here we need to refer to the parent bucket, which of course is this. And in here I do want to assign a variable or an assignment within my variable for each key. So that's main.tf. Let's go look at the variables now. And you can see here there's a variable bucket and tags and objects of a type map object. And within each object there's going to be a string assignment for each key. This will become very clear when I show you the example of calling the module. Let's look at outputs.tf very quickly. It's just going to output the bucket ID, which is getting from bucket the name we gave for it, an ID. That's very simple. Now let's go look at the example of calling the module, which is the terraform.tf. So we're going to call this budget reports. The source is exactly where we were just looking in that directory, that folder earlier. And the bucket, I'm going to give it this name, company budget bucket. This is actually what the AI gave me, but I actually put this suffix on here because it could well be this bucket already exists. So I just put some random characters to make it unique. The tags are going to be that the department is finance and the environment is dev. Pretty typical tags, to be quite honest. And in here we're going to have a number of objects denoted by this map, and inside we're going to have individual objects, which you can see with the blue braces. It's going to be key value pairs. In our case, the key is actually going to be called key, and it's going to be here. Oh, sorry, you can see here. Sorry, this is the key. It's going to be accounting. This is accounting's budget report. This is marketing's budget report. This is engineering's budget report. And then in here, we're going to have a number of key value pairs. And it just so happens that the key of our first key value pair is also called key, just because it happens to be that that is an argument in the AWS S3 object resource. That's a pure coincidence. It could be, this could be a tag, or it could be a source argument, or it could be something else. It just so happens in our case that it's called key. And here we're going to have that we want the file name, including the directory name, the full path is going to be accounting/budgetq1.txt. It's going to be an empty file, but for our example, that really doesn't matter. So we're going to end up with a bucket that looks like this, and inside is going to be a number of objects that look like this. So let's go over to the terminal and try this out. So here we are in the terminal. I've just done an ls with a tac uppercase R recursive, just to prove that these are the same files that we've just been looking at. There's a modules directory inside S3 buckets with objects with those 3 module files, and also at the very top we've got our provider and our terraform.tf. Now I've already run a Terraform init, so we just need to do now a Terraform plan. I'll pause the video and catch up when it's done the plan. Actually, I'll do it the proper way, and I'll create a plan file, and then later we can apply from our plan file. So let's take a look. And here we go, and you can see what the proposal is, that it will create this AWS bucket called company budget bucket and random characters, and there are the tags that I asked for, and everything else is kind of known after apply. And then it's going to create a few objects. You can see that it's actually this is the key that was in my map, so this is how each object is referred to. And the one for accounting is going to be the same bucket, and this is going to be the path, the directory slash file name. And for engineering, it's going to be the same bucket. It's going to be in a different directory, if you like. And then in marketing, same bucket again, and it's going to be in its own directory there. So we've got 4 to add, 1 bucket, 3 S3 objects, and it saved that to the plan. So let's do the apply. It saved you some seconds. Here we go. And there we go. It's created all 4 resources. It has created first the bucket, and then after that it created the 3 objects that we were looking for. And we can now prove this. If I do AWS S3 LS, then we get this. You can see there, company budget bucket just created. And if I now replay that command but put the bucket name and also the switch recursive, then we can see the contents of this bucket. And you can see, there we go, those are our 3 objects, and this is the key which is kind of like folder slash file name. So it worked perfectly, and we can create as many objects or as few as we want, all using this really nice, very user-friendly format here. Okay, there's a whole bunch of braces and stuff, but yeah, it's really nice. We can add more parameters. We only have the key, but we can do more than that in future if we want to develop this module further. And I made all of this with AI. Just a reminder that I made this with Copilot, and I used the quick response. This wasn't even using deep thinking. So this is pretty amazing. There are better AIs out there, but Copilot AI is good enough if you're starting with a really nice prompt that is very clear about what you want, what you're going to give it, what you want to get out of it. Just be very clear up front, use very concise and clear language. Don't write a winding, silly essay. Give it exactly what you need and nothing else, and it can spit out really amazing modules for you. I'm finding that I'm using this in my workflow for creating my Terraform all the time now. Sure, it might struggle with more complex programming languages and things that you're trying to achieve, but for Terraform, for medium complexity, or which I would call this, and even higher, it can do a really good job. And like I say, it just starts with a really good prompt. So I'm going to leave this up here as I close this video. Use this as an inspiration for yourself to create your own prompts, and you can go really far. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Take care. Bye bye.